So the betting markets is screaming a warning that mainstream media won't touch. In just 48 hours, the odds of Americans striking Iran before March 15th have more than doubled from 24% to 55%. Nearly $300 million in bets are now flooding Polymarket as traders position for what could be the biggest Middle East conflict since Desert Storm. But there's something else happening that makes this even more dangerous. So this isn't just about another foreign policy crisis. This is about your family's future. If we go to war with Iran, expect gas prices to explode past $6 a gallon, literally overnight. Your 401 might crater as markets panic over a two-front conflict, and Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, and that's 20% of the world's oil supply that could be cut off instantly. But here's what terrifies the Pentagon. Russia just docked warships in Iranian ports for joint military drills. And this isn't Iraq in 2003 anymore. We're potentially facing Iran and Russia simultaneously, with China watching from the sidelines, ready to make their move on Taiwan while we're distracted. So speaking of breaking developments most people are missing, there's another story unfolding right now that could be just as important for America's future. Breaking news is quietly breaking, and most people missed it. While headlines focused on Iran tensions, the Trump administration just released a document that could fundamentally reshape America's mining sector. And this is real, and it's unfolding right now under Executive Order 14241. This goes far beyond typical policy changes. We're talking about a complete transformation of how America approaches critical mineral extraction. The implications are massive for national security and economic independence, and while China controls 90% of rare earth processing, America sits on untapped mineral wealth that could change everything. And smart money is already positioning in companies like Vizsla Copper, which just announced major developments in their Arizona projects. The timing is not coincidental. As global tensions rise, mineral independence becomes national security. Visit VizslaCorp.com to understand why this executive order could create the next generation of American mining giants. And this mineral independence story connects directly to what's happening in Iran right now. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. Iran's supreme leader just put his nuclear facilities on the highest alert since 1988, because last time they didn't know we were going to do that. But Russia's involvement changes everything. These aren't just Iranian Revolution Guard ships in the Persian Gulf anymore. Russian corvettes are now conducting joint operations, and this means any American strike on Iran could trigger Article 5 of Russia's mutual defense agreements. We're not just betting on a regional conflict anymore, folks. We're betting on the whole party. Let's get to the tweets. So from China Pulse, it says, Iran is reinforcing sensitive sites that were attacked by Israel in Operation Rising Lion. According to satellite images, the tunnel entrance to the nuclear facility in Isfahan have been covered with sand. Let's see. Can we get some better pictures on it? I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit. So you can see, like, yeah, they've been doing a little bit of rebuilding. I think that's where we did the Midnight Hammer drops on them. I think those are right in the same mountain areas. But they covered those areas knowing that those entrances could get obliterated by U.S. bombing strikes and bombing runs. And we have so much military hardware coming into Iran right now. They say it is the biggest aircraft movement since World War II, Vietnam, and potentially even Desert Storm. We have so many aircraft going in. We will get into that here in a few minutes. It says Iran's defensive moves after Israel strikes set the stage for broader geopolitical analysis. Now we dive into how this crisis developed over decades. From Rod D. Martin, he says, how Democrats created the CCP superpower in the Islamic regime in Iran. Rod on NTD. All right, let's get through it. Let's see.
And as we watch with bated breath over the fate of the Iranian people, it calls into question how previous U.S. and Western support has emboldened the regime. Joining us with insight is Rod D. Martin. He's a political analyst and founder and CEO of Martin Capital. Good to see you, Rod. Thanks for joining. In this interconnected world of the commodity economy, U.S. economic support or sanctions can really make or break a country. How has U.S. support at times bolstered the Iranian regime over the course of its reign?
Well, of course, the Iranian regime wouldn't even exist if Jimmy Carter hadn't betrayed our friends in Tehran. The Shah was a democratizing, moderating figure. He presided over a country that had historically been an autocracy, and he was leading it into the modern world. Women were able to be educated, to become professionals, to be stylish, for goodness sake. It was a modernizing country. And Jimmy Carter pulled the plug on that, and, you know, in the name of some misguided attempt to give the people voice. Well, the people he was giving voice weren't the people of Iran. They were a
If you guys can, I want you to go and look up videos of Iran in the 1970s, before this Islamic regime took back over. Women were driving, they were walking around with their hair uncovered, kids were educated. It looked like a modern world. They had movie theaters, they had dance, they had all of these things. And then they lost it. They lost it, and they went back to women getting stoned in the streets and all these things that are just horrible. But then you've got a lot of people inside the United States that's aligning with them, saying they're freer in Iran and they're freer in Palestine and all these places, you know, and women aren't. The women are siding with these guys. They don't understand the complications. They don't understand the gravity of the things that are happening to these people. They don't get it. They want to sit here and say Trump's a dictator for protesting in the streets, and somebody tries to run over an ICE officer and the ICE officer defends himself. Trump's a dictator. They just unalived 4,000 people in the last week. 4,000 protesters. The military goes out and mows these people down. Get a little bit more from him. We're going to go to the next one.
Handful of mullahs and their theocratic, totalitarian thugs who came into power, and it couldn't have happened apart from the United States doing what it did. And then since then, you've seen subsequent Democrat regimes do the same thing here over and over, culminating, of course, in Barack Obama literally sending $400 million in unmarked $100 bills on pallets of cash in an airplane in the middle of the night. You know, all of that money, of course, just goes straight to Hezbollah and Hamas. It's absolutely horrifying, and it's time that we sorted American foreign policy and we're good to our friends.
Rod, appreciate that context. As we look at this moment right now, of course, Trump kind of speaking out of both sides of his mouth, where he said he will participate indirectly in these talks and he wants diplomacy and a deal. But then he was also asked, and he said that regime change would be the best thing for the Iranian people. What's going on in Trump's mind? After the Maduro capture, people thought he was going to move on Iran within a week, and now
There's
been
no way we can
multiple
do the
weeks.
same thing with Iranian as a leader.
Here?
He's already in a bunker.
I think people misunderstand Donald Trump. He did the same thing with Venezuela. In Venezuela, Maduro was offered a deal. He could have left the country with a lot of money and lived a peaceful life in the Riviera or somewhere, and he chose to stand and dare Donald Trump to come and get me. Well, Donald Trump came and got him. And
so, as they would say, FAFO. And I think so. Venezuela was not as well defended as Iran. Iran's got bunkers that are way underground, and I don't know if we can get to the Ayatollah. And that's just the honest truth. But the military's got some crazy stuff we don't know about. But they're very wary of the entire situation. They're building up a presence right now. They expect a conflict, if a conflict happens, to last around 30 days. So while partisan blame flies, the real question isn't how we got here, but whether Iran possesses an immediate threat. And experts are sharply divided. From Illuminati Bot, let's see. So from Pierce, Iran is no threat to the U.S. From John Mearsheimer, no. And a bunch of people start going back and forth. I can't wait to see this kerfuffle.
But the idea that a country like Iran, which is no threat to the United States, or a country like Venezuela, which is no
Iran is no threat to the United States.
No, it's not. Why is it a threat to the United States?
Well, maybe because the Ayatollah has repeatedly threatened the United States publicly.
He can repeatedly threaten the United States till he's blue in the face. Who cares? The question is, does he have the military capability to do harm to us?
Well,
the answer is no.
They've had the military capability.
If it wasn't for the...
But what they have done, they've funneled a huge amount of money into propping up terrorist organizations all around the Middle East, all of whom are wedded to the obliteration of Israel, which is America's main ally in the region, and has a lot of interest, mutual interests. Now, you may not like it, but that's the reality. And so, yes, they represent a threat to one of America's main allies and to Americans who live in Israel, for example, to American service people who work with Israelis. Of course they do.
But you're making the argument that they're not a threat to the United States, they're a threat to Israel. And because we're joined at the hip with Israel, anything that's a threat to Israel is a threat to the United States. I don't buy that argument. I'm an American firster. I care about the U.S. national interest. And it is not in our national interest to have this conflictual relationship with Iran. And if it weren't for the fact that the Israelis have so much power in the United States and insist that we keep Iran as an adversary, we would otherwise have good relations with the Iranians.
I disagree with that. Actually, almost entirely on premise. I don't think we would have good relations with Iran. They are a dictatorship that suppresses their people, and that is going to be, if you go against the regime, they kill you. They'll go after your family. They'll disappear everybody around you. That's not a friendly nation to the United States. That's not anything that we would ever align with or something that we want to do. It's not something. I disagree with that statement entirely. Yes, we're close friends with Israel. We're also close friends with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt. All the countries that are inside of those regions. They're a direct threat to Italy, one of our NATO allies, a direct threat to Greece. Anybody within 1,000 or 1,500 mile radius is directly impacted by Iran if they decide to put their finger on a trigger. Everybody wants to point to Israel because it's the lowest apple on it, and they have a hard-on to get rid of Israel. But most of our near-peer allies or our allies in the region are directly impacted from anything Iran decides to do. They're also the area where Pakistanis and Afghanis go through to go fight in the Middle East, and they're funded from Iran as well. So there are many geopolitical things outside of the Israeli connection that does this, but he's not wrong that it's also a lot to do with that also. But academic debates aside, politicians are taking a harder line, and they're not just talking about negotiations. From Senator Tom Cotton, I love that guy. It's important to remember Iran has never won a war, but it's never lost a negotiation. It's past time for this anti-American regime to end. So they do. They will negotiate. They'll lie, get a little deal signed, and then try to buy themselves another 30 days. They've been doing this for decades. Trump's not stupid. That's why we have more military hardware in the region now than has ever happened before. Watch.
Yeah, Sean, I think that's well said. It's useful to remember Iran has never won a war, but it's never lost a negotiation, because Iran is not a normal nation. Iran is a revolutionary Islamist regime that has been exporting terror and bloodshed around the world for 47 years, most notably directed against the United States and Israel, which it still chants in the streets to this day are the great Satan and the little Satan. President Trump has been clear now for more than 5 years in office. We cannot allow them to have nuclear weapons. We cannot allow them to have ballistic missiles that can threaten us and our friends, and they have to stop supporting terrorism. The military is posturing itself right now to make sure that the president has options. So if there is going to be any kind of negotiated outcome, it's something that's negotiated from a position of strength, not what Joe Biden and Barack Obama did, negotiate from a position of weakness and appease the Ayatollahs and pay them off to the tunes of billions of dollars.
Exactly what he just said. The only language Iran speaks is strength. They don't, like when you go out there and Obama handed them pallets of cash, Biden was removing the sanctions and letting them get some money in, thinking money's going to solve the issue. All that did was give money back to the terrorists. They were going back to kill Americans. All they were doing is re-enabling the enemy they had on the ropes. All they had to do was sit back and wait, and Iran would collapse itself. Instead, they got involved and they ruined everything. And, I can't wait for Iran to see what the A-10s can actually do. It's going to be fun. And our F-22s, F-16s, F-35s, the B-2 bombers, our Aegis-guided missile destroyers, and all of our other crazy cool things that we've got on there. So Cotton's war cry reflects growing hawkish sentiment, but the military reality on the ground is escalating beyond rhetoric. From Unknown, it says, OSN data, Russian warship docks in Iran as joint drills begin at key choke points. Naval convergence at the Strait of Hormuz, which is a very narrow little place, almost as crazy as the Strait of Gibraltar. The Russian Baltic fleet's corvette Stoichi has been arrived at Bandar Abbas, officially kicking off the Maritime Security Belt 2026 exercises. Let's see what we got here. It doesn't look like it. Anyways, Russian warships arriving in Iranian ports. I'm going to check on X and see if there's a video clip for it. Just a picture of the Russian ship that is there. Let's go back. We're getting to it. All right. So from Faliz Brohi, we've got Russia's defense minister published footage of the corvette Stoichi docking at Bandar Abbas ahead of joint drills with Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in the Gulf of Oman. Let's see. It's almost sad looking, right? it's kind of cute. They're doing their little photo ops and stuff. With how prevalent 4K cameras are, you think that guy that was there is like a state media person wouldn't have some Panasonic camera you buy for $140 off of Amazon. They could do better. They can do way better. But the Maritime Alliance is now official, and intelligence sources say this coordination is Washington seriously concerned about military operations. And if you guys are on X, you will see all the AI videos that Iran is putting out. We may have one of those in here. We'll have to look. That they're saying that United States has been defeated and all their ships have been sunk, and Trump, you are in for a treat. And so from live now from Fox, I could talk today. Is the U.S. any closer to a military strike on Iran? According to Axios, the answer is yes. Let's see what they have to say.
You are taking a live look at the White House at this hour, and I actually want to pop this up on your screen as a new report this morning from Axios claims the U.S. could be moving toward military action in Iran, despite officials from both the U.S. and Iran saying it appears Tuesday's nuclear talks in Geneva went fairly well. Barak Ravid with Axios writing an article this morning saying, quote, Trump moves closer to a major war with Iran. It could come sooner and be much bigger than most recognize, sources tell me. President Trump's U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner met with officials in Geneva on Tuesday for those discussions on Iran's nuclear program. Iran's foreign minister emerged from the talk saying the U.S. and Iran found some common ground. But at the same time, Iranian officials have threatened military action of their own, and some have questioned whether Iran can be trusted in those talks. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei went on an X rant during the talks, presenting some strong words for President Trump and the U.S., which, in all honesty, is not really that different from what we've heard from him in the past. So the question is, what happens next? Ben Cohen is a senior analyst and rapid response director at the Foundation for Defensive Democracies, bringing him in now to talk a little bit more about where we head next. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us this morning.
Good morning, Josh. Good to be with you.
Thank you. And of course, wanted to ask you here, we heard from Iran's foreign minister right after those talks concluded yesterday, possibly still kind of ongoing at the time, but he seemed to indicate that there was at least a little success that took place. I wanted to get your take on his comments and what you feel kind of progressed maybe during those talks.
Well, in some ways, Josh, I think the most significant thing happened outside the talks, because as those talks were taking place and as envoys Witkoff and Kushner were arriving in Geneva, Iran actually carried out naval drills in the Gulf, and you had live fire exercises going on. Now, that waterway where those naval drills were being carried out carries 20% of the world's oil. And Iran was basically sending a very strong message that, look, any attack on us will result in a major rupture to the world's oil supplies. So, in Geneva, we're hearing a lot of sugar-coated words from the Iranian delegation, but one could also argue that what we're seeing in terms of the Gulf and in terms of that naval exercise yesterday carried out by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, that's where we're seeing the real Iran. I think as well, in terms of Foreign Minister Araghchi's comments yesterday, that good progress is being made. What struck me is that there is very little detail that is being shared. And we know already that two of the three topics that the US wants to negotiate with Iran, though the three topics are the support for terror proxies, Iran's ballistic missile program, and Iran's nuclear program. The Iranians are only willing to talk about the nuclear program. They're not willing to talk about their ballistic missiles. They're not willing to talk about their support for terrorist organizations around the Middle East. And even on the nuclear program, I don't think that the US administration is going to get the kind of deal that it's looking for. The Iranian deputy foreign minister over the weekend was saying, well, if we end our enrichment activity, our uranium enrichment activities, or we move these activities abroad, we want you to lift sanctions. So I personally don't see much of a path forward for these negotiations.
So it's funny that they say that. Most people don't see the path forward of the negotiation, but Trump's really going to try because he does not want to pull the trigger. But additionally, on top of that, all of these things, Iran knows that they can negotiate, get a few months, get a few months, get a few months. They did that with Obama. They did that with the Clintons. They did that with Bush. They've done that with all U.S. presidents. But they don't realize Donald Trump's a whole different person. He is literally the definition of FAFO. You've got the Department of War with Pete Hegseth. You got the best Secretary of State in U.S. history, Marco Rubio. And we have Emhoff and a bunch of other people out there making these deals and trying to get these things done. But I don't think that Iran understands that it's out of time. You don't move hundreds of billions of dollars in assets to just sit there and intimidate somebody. We want them to make a deal, sure. But if that deal doesn't go sideways, they're not going to give them the time they need to protect themselves. But reports suggest the U.S. is indeed moving closer to military action, with Iran reportedly facing its most serious threat in decades. From real-time OSI INT, we've got Wall Street Journal. Iran is facing its worst military threat since 1998. I'm going to try to read this off for you. I can't do it on the screen. So, Iran is facing worst military threat since 88. 8-year war with Iraq. All sorts of crazy stuff. I'm gonna back out of that one because we can't really see it. But intelligent assessments are backing up betting markets are now pricing in a dramatic surge in strike probabilities. And it's crazy. We could bet on war now. If you go on Polymarket, you can bet on war. You can bet if it's going to be 85 degrees tomorrow. You can bet if Taylor Swift is going to sing a word in the Super Bowl. There are so many betting fields on there. It's insane. But apparently betting on war is the new thing. So according to the UK report, Polymarket betting site SURGED bets that an American attack on Iran will occur before March 15th. 2 days ago, the probability was at 24%, and now it stands at 55%. 55% chance. It is spiking. It is going higher and higher, and it is all real-time betting odds with a volume of $289 million going through that, which means there is a heavy volume, and a lot of people are betting on that all the time. So while gamblers bet on war, diplomats are still talking, but these conversations reveal just how far apart the sides remain. Back to our friends at Rapid Response 47, it says, Press Secretary on talks with Iran. There was a little bit of progress made, but we're still very far apart on some issues. Let's see what Caroline had to say.
Where do things stand after yesterday's talks?
I think you heard from the administration and the State Department yesterday that there was a little bit of progress made, but we're still very far apart on some issues. I believe the Iranians are expected to come back to us with some more detail in the next couple of weeks, and so the president will continue to watch how this plays out.
So Iran thinks that their high level of technology is sending their Shahed drones or whatever they have. I think it's a Russian duplicate of the Shahed or something similar to that. They just kind of set it, forget it, let it go. They have a lot of unguided missiles that they just kind of shoot, knowing approximately where they're going to land. They got their ICBMs, all this. The amount of technology and firepower that we have that we don't, like as American citizens, wouldn't even know everything we have. The Iranians sure as hell don't comprehend the level of technology and the level of integration that 2 carrier strike fleets bring, along with 75 bases in the region, 60,000 or so American troops in the area. They don't get how committed we are to protecting ourselves, our allies, and also their protesters in the street. They're killing thousands of protesters that are trying to regain freedom in Iran that they had back in the 70s. Iran cannot comprehend, just like Venezuela couldn't comprehend it. Remember the discombobulator that Trump was talking about? And that's only something portable that our guys were carrying. That's not even including the full-blown capabilities that are classified sitting on some of those ships. The press secretary's measured words about progress contrast sharply with the underlying warning, make a deal or face the consequences. From another one from our friends, POTUS has always been very clear that with respect to Iran or any country around the world, diplomacy is always his first option. That's why we call him the peace president. But you know what? Rule with, they say, iron fist and velvet glove. He's trying his best to avoid wars, but he's not afraid to do what he needs to do.
President has always been very clear, though, with respect to Iran or any country around the world, diplomacy is always his first option, and Iran would be very wise to make a deal with President Trump and with this administration. He's talking to many people, of course, his national security team, first and foremost, and you know who the members of that team are. And this is something, obviously, the president takes seriously. He's always thinking about what's in the best interest of the United States of America, of our military, of the American people, and that's how he makes decisions with respect to military action of any kind.
And I think that's the right way to go about it. Never shy away from the sword, but always try for the olive branch first. And that seems to be what Marco Rubio and Trump are so in line, and Stephen Miller as well, and making sure that we try to pursue peace with every scrap of everything that we can. But you can't only have one side that wants peace. Both sides have to want peace. And Iran has always been a disengaged negotiator. Their heart's not in it. They want what they want, and they know they can just do what they can to appease us as much as possible. But the Polymarket surge tells us what the intelligence community already knows about, but won't say publicly. Military action is probably inevitable. When anonymous traders risk $300 million on specific March 15th deadline, they're not gambling. They're acting on inside information. The question isn't if anymore. It's when and how big this gets. Hopefully not too big. But the bottom line here is America is closer to a major war than any point since World War II. And this time we're facing opponents who can actually fight back. Probably somewhat. The betting markets see what's coming because money doesn't lie like politicians do. Iran has never won a war, but has also never lost a negotiation until now. Trump's moving pieces on the board that Iran can't counter or even comprehend, and they know it. Russia's desperate naval theater won't change the outcome, but it will make the cost much higher. The March 15th deadline isn't arbitrary, it's operational. And do you think Trump should strike Iran's nuclear facilities before they complete their weapons program, or negotiate from a position of strength? Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments, and check out the Next News merch shop for gear that shows you're awake to what's really happening.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.